I have a very important question.
I've got a very important answer. Super important answer.
Yeah, good.
Most important of all answers.
Settle a bet.
Okay. I love how this is starting.
Budnick or Bundick?
It's Bundick.
Okay, thank you.
It's B as in boy, U-N, D as in David, I-C-K. It's Bun and
Are you
Dick.
talking
Okay,
about
make
how
sure you look at
Tristan
him
says
when you say
things?
this.
Bundick.
But I'm from the Midwest. We just move letters around. And
Listen,
syllables.
I've been called much worse.
Dude.
So,
I'm sure. I'm sure.
my last name was fantastic to have as a middle schooler. And like when I call, especially when I call places not from Columbus to order things or I'm doing customer service or whatever, and I give my last name, there's always that pause. Like, especially like when we're out of town or like we're ordering pizza or whatever, and it's like, yeah, it's can I get a name for the order? Yeah, it's John Bundick. Yeah, it was a terrible name in middle school, and like that's just like, oh, okay.
Leave me alone.
Because it's like, he probably is making this up, but it seems like a weird direction to go in making up a terrible name.
At least it's easy to spell, like phonetically. Like
Yeah.
you could tell somebody, and the
Sure.
barista probably would get it right.
Yeah. We're
Pick a bun.
I feel so justified though, because like this was like a 10-minute argument, and I'm like, no, it's literally spelled this way. Like, why would he have people mispronounce it on purpose? Like,
It makes us all
shut
less.
up.
It makes us less uncomfortable when
We're
we say it if
piling
we
on
just push
Tristan.
it on.
no, it's totally fine. My wife and I, when she was pregnant, I almost said when we were pregnant. I was never pregnant. When she was pregnant with our son, we were having this whole discussion about like what's his name going to be, on and on and on. And I was like, it doesn't matter, because in the 5th grade, every kid's going to realize what his last name is, and from then on, he is just going to be Bundick, and that is the way of our people. My wife, and
passing it down.
I mean, he's got a pretty cool name. I wanted him to be Beowulf as his middle name.
Ooh.
And my wife was not having that. Like, I even like led with some names I knew she was going to say no to try to get to Beowulf, right?
That's tight though.
Because like
Try
I
to
love
lead
that
the way.
story, I love that narrative, and it's like, the story of Christendom coming to Northern Europe. It's the first, English novel, and it's this epic poem of heroism, and I'm thinking of a different book now because I just moved it. Books, so many books.
Yeah.
So anyway, so we were talking about this, and I wanted Beowulf because it means bear wolf, right? And so that's awesome.
No, it's
and second, like he's this noble king who does these like great acts, and my wife said no to that. So I quashed Moses. So that's right.
Is this Moses?
Yeah, Moses was on the table for her.
Yeah.
Not at all for this guy. It's like I don't.
When do you have Beowulf versus Moses? I mean, there's a clear winner.
Right, Beowulf.
Yeah.
And,
for sure. Although,
yeah, Moses, he's a great guy.
I'm just saying too. At some point you could be parting the sea.
Yeah, there's that. But
Yeah.
the thing that I brought
No,
up was that every like Moses that I'd ever met that was like a black man was like a man from like Mississippi, and like and I was like, I don't know that we're gonna raise that kid, and so
To live up.
But that's the middle name, right?
yeah, that's middle name. So
Okay.
That's a throwaway name.
yeah, and that was my point.
Yeah.
And so, and whenever I give the whole name, which I won't do here because I know you guys have like global reach, and I don't want people like stalking my kid, is when you put it all together, it's a name that says, oh yeah, that's a guy you respect.
Yeah.
And when I tell guys that, like, put out the name, like, yeah, you should, and about 30% of women agree with me, and think about half of that 30% is probably just being polite.
Yeah, it's great.
Totally.
It sounds so good.
You should have gone with it. I don't know why she didn't choose it.
Want to go ahead and roll?
We're going to do it?
Yeah, let's
All
do
right.
the thing.
Yeah, let's do it.
Do the
Got the-
thing.
Yeah. Hey, roll the thing, David.
Hey, roll
It's
it.
the
There it is.
thing.
I love the thing.
Shake.
What's our artist name? What's his?
King Flamingo?
King Flamingo.
King
man.
Flamingo.
King Flamingo.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We love his stuff.
We want him on here
Shout
at
out,
some point.
dude.
I mean,
It'd be
let's get the
amazing.
king in here. If you
Yeah.
get the king here, I want to be here because I want to discuss this very specific intro. I love it.
Yes.
So this is my introduction to the intro to King Flamingo. So yeah.
Which we really like. We'd like King Flamingo to make us a song specifically for the
commission him.
podcast.
I mean,
like that would be tight.
So I'm just going to say right now that everyone who's watching this needs to @King Flamingo.
Come on, bud.
Yeah.
And just ask for that. Just like,
Yeah.
let's make this happen.
You
This
gotta
is the
follow
internet
him
age.
on all the things,
That's
and also
true,
be
that's
nice
true.
about it and tell him to make it.
I mean, I mean, we got to be polite about the ask.
Yeah.
Right? So
He
Yeah.
probably doesn't even have the @King Flamingo. It's probably taken, so we're just going
Spam some dude.
I feel
some
like
dude.
this is like a post sort of situation where someone, which one of you is the post guy? You're the post guy.
Post guy, yeah.
Just find out what it is. Find out what his Insta is, and just
We'll find it. We'll find it. We'll track him down.
Like right here. Put it like right here.
We're coming for you, King
So,
Flamingo.
Yeah. We have to tag him like every single time and just be that annoying like. Who are these people? Why?
I mean,
He'll eventually say yes.
the worst that's going to happen is going to block you, which is no different than what's happening right now.
Yeah, we can make more accounts.
Yeah.
Nothing
Nothing creepy about the ex-girlfriend stalker right there. Is it?
No, not at all. Tristan intros.
Oh, hey, what's up, guys? It's me, the guy that does the intro poorly, but I do it every time. So we're here, and
I meant to try and steal the intro from you.
You
But
did.
you know
it's
what?
fine. Go ahead.
Oh, it's too late. He's cutting me in. Oh no, John Bundick, take over the intro.
Oh, no, I really
All
wasn't.
right,
I just was trying to.
This
be
is
funny.
TRIFLIX
It's over.
LLC. We are a creative media studio based out of Columbus, Indiana, the best town in the world, and we're the best podcast because we're the best. And we got the best guests.
Podcast in the best city.
We got the best guests. We got the best cameras and lights, and it's all arbitrary. So we're just happy you're here.
Yeah, just everything.
It's all arbitrary. But we're so glad you're here to hear a wonderful tale of John Bundick. Actually, he's our second guest to be on a second time.
Yeah.
We just had Abby on, so now we're cycling back through all of the people that live in the best
ran out of
town.
content.
We're out of guests. There's no one else in
Yeah.
Columbus at
I
this
mean,
point.
it's reduce, reuse, recycle. We're recycling right now, so.
But there's a very specific reason why we're bringing him back on. He last time he was on, we interviewed him and kind of got the background of who you are and what led you to where you were previously. But there's been a big shift in your life
Huge shift.
towards a passion.
Yeah.
Towards a big passion. And we'll dive
Passion
into that
project.
right
Yeah.
after we introduce our host, David Bacon.
It's me. I'm the guy that helps run all this stuff.
It's nice to meet you, David.
It's
It's
me. Happen. It's me, David.
It's me.
And our producer, Cole.
Ankner.
No, just no.
Don't give my last
It's just Cole. He's like, we're global outreach.
Cole.
We don't want people knowing his last name.
Yeah,
It's too late now.
plastered all over my Instagram, but don't worry about it.
And
You can go to my website, coleankney.com.
It's the 21st century. There's no privacy.
Yeah, no.
What do you mean that doesn't auto forward to TRIFLIX LLC?
It does not.
No.
I didn't spend all that time on Squarespace to have it forward to TRIFLIX.
Boo.
To our handcrafted
amazing.
Wix site.
Oh, yeah, it's a beautiful site.
Competing sponsors right there.
I know, right? Well, we don't have any sponsors, so
Disclaimer.
Ooh, okay.
whoever comes first wins.
I mean, that's how most races win. All right, go.
Oh boy.
This is going to be a fun one, guys. I've been
I
looking
love
forward
it.
to this because I didn't have the opportunity to talk to you, interview you, whatever you want to call it, on the last podcast that you were
You
on.
didn't
so
exist at
I didn't
TRIFLIX.
exist at the time.
No, I mean, you were not real to me.
Yeah.
Neither were you to me. And eventually I had this guy like
Feelings
following me around
mutual.
Columbus, like waving and honking at me, and I'm like, I have no idea who you are.
Yeah, eavesdropping us on
I'm trying to
our
remember,
coffee
like-
meetings.
Yeah, how did we, I don't even know how we actually met.
I think it was at Lukaby.
It had to have been a Luke
I mean,
meeting.
I'm sure it was.
For sure.
Unofficial sponsor.
And they're like,
Yeah,
Lukaby.
It was like
could
every
be.
week they're like somebody would show up and just say something and be like, "Hey guys, like what's happening?" They're like, "Hey," and I'm just like sitting there and they're like, "Meet this person," and so that's how I met everybody.
Yeah.
Actually, we kept getting texts from John as he eavesdropped and was offering commentary,
Yeah.
and I was like,
I
"Hey,
got
check
left
this
out.
out."
Yeah.
And he's
Okay.
like, "Who is this guy?"
To be fair, I think we'd met before that.
Really?
Oh, for
Yeah.
sure.
Yeah,
for
for sure.
Like, I knew
just didn't have
enough.
his phone number at that
Yeah.
point to get him in on the
Yes.
the eavesdropping
Yeah.
of the conversation.
It was one of the
Commentary.
first meetings we had with Daniel there.
I
And
know.
we were
Yeah.
giving him like pointers on how to like get photos during a proposal without like being seen. But like all that part, like nobody around us heard in the beginning.
No,
And so I was
all
like,
I
what are
heard.
you creeping around.
All
trying
I
to
heard
get
was him
pictures.
just like talking about like he needed to be in the bushes and taking pictures and not be seen.
that's
and I was
right.
like,
Of people kissing.
yeah, I was like, bro,
forgot.
that's a bit much.
Yeah.
And let's, at the same time, this lady sitting near you, away from us, overheard the exact same conversation and just is
Yep.
like mean mugging and like very concerned.
I mean,
about
rightfully so.
Yes.
I would be scared.
This is why we got an
to
office.
hear it.
Yeah.
Now we can talk about our stalker pics without anybody listening.
Yep.
And no judgment will ever
Yeah.
be passed.
No, there is no
It's a safe
judgment
space
coming
here.
from no. Is this a safe space? Can I share everything in my heart?
I think
Yeah,
our
'cause
I've
YouTube
got-
channel
This is a
very
safe space. The
Yeah.
comment section isn't.
Okay,
Yeah,
well, I've got
don't go to
some
the
very
comments.
specific hot takes that may
Please.
come up at some point.
Yeah.
If we ever
Be
get
more
to
than
the
happy.
if we get around to the office, I've got a very specific one there.
Okay.
Which,
Okay.
we
Yeah.
may have discussed before, but
Yes.
you know,
Nah.
I don't know that the office. I mean, it's already come up once. I mean, why wouldn't the office come up again? It's
That's true.
We can do
It's a big deal.
follow-ups.
Yes.
Or
Absolutely.
just slide it in there.
I'll slide that in there, man.
yeah. I mean,
Hold on, let me put it in the outline.
Let me put it in the outline
No.
here. As organic as possible.
I was gonna say, isn't this like supposed to be an organic, emerging conversation?
Oh, yeah.
Just
Yeah,
between,
yeah. Keep going.
between a bunch of
Keep
people
going.
talking about things, right?
I love it.
So-
Oh, yeah.
Don't stop. Don't stop.
Yeah.
We are the model of organic conversations.
What show was that again?
So I know these guys. I'm gonna push this on here.
Yeah.
So I know that David and
Example one.
Shush. So I know that David and Tristan kind of know a little bit more than I do. So I'm gonna help prompt us through here. So I know that you just had a little bit of a shift in life.
Yeah, I did.
You got a new path here.
Yeah.
Kind of just give me a quick synopsis, and we'll kind of talk through it. So I'm very interested in what you got going on.
Okay, so I am Bartholomew County, born and raised, so just outside of Columbus. I grew up in Taylorsville, Indiana, which is a town that basically no one knows about unless you live here. It's
true.
So true.
It is an unincorporated town, but it does have its own post office. So
Okay.
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, take
Facts.
that. All those other unincorporated towns. in
Moving
America.
up in the world.
I thought it was just kind of like Edinburgh's dirty cousin.
Whoa. We are
Come on.
we are civilization.
You're,
Hey,
you're
I'm
talking
just
to
checking.
two residents of Taylorsville right now.
Oh,
Me
really?
and John.
Yeah.
I did not know
Heritage
this.
Heights represent.
Actually, yeah.
Yeah.
Me too, bro.
Yeah.
So
I know all of this from the guy who lives in Nineveh. We have
Yeah.
one
Know
four-way
your
we call
place,
the
Cole.
four-way.
Oh my goodness.
but
It's
so,
got a light too, right?
It's got one light. Yeah.
One light
Blink,
town.
is it Blink? Or
Yes.
is it
Yeah.
Okay.
It
It's
blinks.
basically the Cars movie. It's just, you just pull in. Nothing
that
going
makes
on.
sense.
No one comes. No one leaves.
There's kind of
I mean-
there's actually some truth to this.
No, I mean,
there's probably a mater that works at the auto shop that's at the four-way.
Yeah.
Everything reads that you're saying so far. So anyway,
Sorry, continue,
I grew
sir.
up in Taylorsville.
Okay.
Grew up around the firehouse. My dad's a volunteer firefighter at German Township. Has been since I think Moses came down from the mountain.
Okay.
Which
Not-
may be a
not-
conversational callback. We'll see how the cold open goes. And if not, everyone's like, "What happened?" But no, my dad's been there since the 80s. And so I grew up around the firehouse, grew up around firefighters. My mom hates it when I tell this story, but it's true. It's where I learned how to swear, which I will not do today.
Yeah.
Thank you, sir.
I try not to make it happen. But I did so as like a child, is because, again, they're firefighters, right?
Yeah.
Great guys. And so I grew up in the first responder house. And so then they did, 15 years of student ministry, which is crazy fun and amazing. And if you are a person who goes to church, the first thing you need to do is just be really thankful that you've got a student pastor. And the second thing you need to do is ask them, like, how can I come alongside you to, like, help shape the future? Because that's a big deal. And you don't just hire them to do it. You hire them to, like, help guide you along the process. Okay. Soapbox off of it.
Okay.
So I did that for a while. My wife and I we got married, like 10 years ago, 10 years and some change.
Something like that.
Yeah.
Give or take.
He
Give or
knows.
take, yeah. It's October 1st, so to be.
Smart man.
Saved.
Yeah. And so anyway, we're back here in town. I got involved with the Columbus Police Department as a chaplain because I was riding with a friend of mine who had just gotten onto the department, and he's like, "Hey, you should come out and ride," which is a thing I'd done when I was living over in Martinsville, Indiana, with a sheriff's deputy over there. And I really just enjoyed kind of going out, seeing the roads, and just what they do. And in the process of this, what basically happened is second call into the first shift I've ever ridden with my buddy is someone has come home and found their husband dead, which is like this really tragic thing. And so we show up there, and my friend looks at the widow, the now widow, and says, "This is John. He's my pastor. You can talk to him." So, which was not part of the original agreement of getting in a car. It was just like, just watch you do your thing, and we're going to hang out and maybe go to Chipotle later.
No corpses were mentioned.
They weren't. And so, but I got to engage in this real conversation with this woman who was experiencing immense loss in that moment, and be there as her family was showing up, be able to just basically be with people who were hurting, which allowed these officers to do the things that they needed to do in order to take care of the situation, right? Because there's a whole process that goes along with that.
Right.
Afterwards, I was talking to the guy I was riding with, and a detective at the time was a guy who I went to high school with, and they're like, you could do this all the time. And so that's sort of the path of me doing that as a volunteer. And so I've been volunteering as a chaplain for 4 years, actually this March. And
this is where I'm going to stop you.
Yeah.
And I'm going to ask you, if you don't mind, explain what is a chaplain.
Yeah, so everyone thinks like a chaplain is like a pastor, and not all pastors make good chaplains, and not all chaplains are pastors.
Okay.
So what a chaplain does in kind of the first responder realm is there are people who come alongside both the first responders and people in the community in moments of crisis and moment of hurt. So, like, for instance, with my officers, I've got 86 sworn officers at the Columbus Police Department here in Columbus, Indiana, not to be confused with Columbus, Ohio, which sometimes happens.
Thank you.
And,
So
or Columbus,
often.
Georgia.
Yeah.
And so one of the things that I do is I'm available for them by state statute in Indiana. They can say basically anything to me. It's covered. It's a mental health exception, and so I'm basically there, guidance. Clearly I'm not a therapist, but being able to kind of process and mirror, refer them to resources. So if an officer were to say, hey, I'm thinking about, I've got a lot of anxiety, I've got a lot of stress, I've got something going on, do you know a therapist? Like, I've got a whole list of people that I know that I trust, and because I trust them and my officers trust me, I confirm that way.
Okay. Wow, that's super cool.
So just various other things I can do to come alongside and kind of just help them do their job. And we can talk about how hard that job is. And again, in a complicated climate, if we're just being 100% honest.
Yeah.
Right?
Oh, yeah.
And so kind of public facing, what that looks like is on scenes, it's everything from, just kind of standing around watching things happen because I have no power in any situation. I'm just, hello, chaplain here. Or it's, death notifications, which is one of the things that is, this is a really important time in someone's life, right? So a lot of times people have no idea that the person that I'm going to tell them that this person that they love very much has died. And so how to do that in a way that you do it well, that is honest, that's good, because what a lot of us want to do is we want to like soft shoe, or we want to sort of like pad the impact, and that makes it worse, right? And so one of the things that you have to develop pretty quickly is the ability to say really hard things to people that they don't want to hear.
Just ripping Band-Aids all day.
I mean, it is what it is, right? You are basically ruining people's lives.
Yeah.
That's part of what I do as a volunteer gig, right? And
Was that part of the appeal?
I know, right? It's a great way to put it. What do you do, sir? I ruin people's lives.
Perfect. So, I
can see the title now. Ruining people's lives. John Bundick.
But it used to be voluntarily. Voluntary.
Yeah. And so this is what I do. And that's those are bits and pieces of what a chaplain does. But basically, it's support for your agency. And so in Bartholomew County, a lot of the volunteer fire departments have, chaplains who are volunteers. The city of Columbus, the city fire department has Ron Bridgewater, who's the Columbus fire chaplain. Robert Vester's the lead chaplain over at county. And then we've got 3 chaplains over at CPD, at the Columbus Police Department, and I'm one of them. And so this is what we do. So
wow. That's pretty cool. I had, to be honest with you, I had no clue that this existed.
Yeah.
It makes total sense.
Yeah, it does. And this is a thing that most people don't know exists, because it's one of those things like IMPD, Indianapolis Metro Police Department. They have like full-time chaplains on staff, and I think a couple part-time ones last time I talked to somebody up there. But they're an agency of like multiple thousand officers.
Yeah,
right. But when we think about like our officers that we've got here in Columbus, we think of Columbus as like the Athens of the prairie, like this place where it's like this idyllic little like like place in
Yeah,
the
yeah,
midst
yeah.
of southern
Oasis.
Indiana. And one of the things that I've been like both privileged to see, and it's been this opportunity to be able to share with people in the community ways they can make a real meaningful impact, is I get to see some of the brokenness, because along with like notifications, one of the things that I do is I try to ride at least one shift every week with my officers as a volunteer. And so sometimes I get to see those very broken spaces. Like people have all sorts of thoughts on addiction and on what it means to like overdosing and whatnot. And unless you've had this happen in your home, most people have never actually seen it.
Right.
And so I've seen that. I know where the homeless camps in Columbus generally are. And I know so I get to see these kinds of things, which gives me this opportunity around that as well. To start to say to people when they're like, well, what do we do to fix this? Like, oh, let me just give you like 10 things that you could do that would be like wonderful. Or if you could get a group of people to do this thing, or like, so being able to equip the community around that. And so anyway, lost my train of thought.
That's
Coming
okay.
back around.
That's okay.
Sorry. You start talking about a bunch of things and stories and whatnot. So anyway, all that to say is that like most agencies our size, people don't think that there are terrible things that happen. Mm-hmm. But depending on like what study you look at, right? Officers, 20-year veteran in law enforcement, will see somewhere between 200 and 800, kind of depending on who you ask, and there's a bunch of whatever.
Regional, locale.
Right. I mean, if you're in Chicago or LA, it's probably much different than Edinburgh, Indiana. But still, if you're in like a 20-year lifespan of law enforcement, you have like whatever we call 200 critical incidents. These are traumatic events. And to put that in perspective, the average American sees somewhere between 1 and 4 over the course of their lifetime. So this would be something like finding a dead body, fighting for your life, extreme violence, witnessing extreme violence or community violence. So very few of us see more than 1 or 2. It's like, so for my officers, sometimes their Tuesday is a thing that people would talk to their therapist about for 10 years. Wow. And
no
so
joke.
kind of being alongside them and supporting that. And so even in agencies our size, having chaplains available is a really important thing, because it's not just about therapy or writing or the notifications. It's also about being, we made the joke earlier, but like being a safe place to land to say, hey, this thing I saw last week, it's kind of like sticking around. What do I do with that? And so having specific trainings, and there are things that we know, evidence-based, that will prevent trauma and PTSD, which then makes them a better officer, which makes them better for our community, which then answers some of the questions that people have in this national policing conversation. So I get to be part of that, and that's really awesome.
Right.
Gosh. So you get to help both some of the people that you come in contact with, civilians, I guess is the best way to put it, on your ride-alongs and everything, but then you're also helping officers themselves.
The families of the officers.
Yeah.
Okay.
So whole thing. One of my favorite things I get to do, and it's a weird thing. So you don't look like this because you don't know your way around food, right? And so, I mean, in case you're like listening to this as opposed to watching it, I am like 6'4" and 185 pounds soaking wet, and just six pack. Sarcasm, all of that.
I was like, you're 6'4"? I'm so small.
But, so when my officers are, when their wives or they are going to have a baby or whatever they're going to be at. So, one of my favorite things to do is just like, here's a bunch of freezer meals because, you and I are dads.
Yeah.
Like the one thing you don't want to do is like, what's one less thing I have to do?
Oh, for
when
sure.
a newborn's at home. And so it's like, if there are 4 meals that I don't have to make,
it's huge.
it's like, oh my gosh. All I have to do is remember to take something out of the freezer, either the night before in the morning. I'll take it.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
And so just giving
Lifesavers.
So like, but that's a huge thing for families, right? And so, and it's not because like I'm so awesome or whatever, but it's one of those like, how do I practically help make the lives of our officers and their families better? Because the better that is, the better they are on the street, and the better that they, and also I just genuinely love these people. Don't tell them I said that though, because they'll think I'm soft. But no.
Erase it.
Gone from the podcast.
We're not sure how many
We'll just
CPD officers listen.
We'll bleep out the word love, and then listeners can just assume.
Up to interpretation.
If we could just every time
scarier.
love is said in this, just hit the button. Yeah.
I just
we need a bleep.
That might be
I
worse.
need to
Not
add
gonna
it
lie.
here. Yeah.
man.
Sorry, no.
No,
okay.
you're good. So, gosh, I have so many questions for you. Thinking about what you do with this.
Well, if it helps, I can talk nonstop. So
the one thing that I did want to ask, and I know you gave us a little glimpse, but obviously with the climate around police right now, like, give me some thoughts on this from like your your point of view, because I mean you're getting.
You bleep these people, but but also,
but you're getting both views. You know what I mean? Because it's not you're not a police officer, but you're getting to see both civilian life and kind of what they're going through.
Yeah, and also if you're listening, I have an all-year tan, so and so that also, and that I mean, literally, that has been a thing that has come up in various places when people find out like, oh, so you like. But
well, you've openly shared before that you've experienced the negative side of how people view police, and now you're in a position where you're interacting and showing love and compassion to the same demographic that a lot of people show hate towards.
Yeah. So. I think what was it? Like, I think it was like episode 4 or something like that.
Yeah.
So yeah, if you want the whole story, go back there. So it's been interesting being part of this world, right? And in this weird Venn diagram. And so I think there is a national conversation to be had, not just about policing, but what we think good policing is, right? What are our actual goals? And beyond that, there's a question of legislative priorities, right? So we have, and this is, these stats that I should probably Google before I give them to you, but by and large, it's pretty easy to find out that the United States imprisons more people than any other country in the world, including Iran and China. And that's not proportionally, like numerically. Right. And so, which is crazy.
No, that's insane.
Yeah. Now, again, there's probably some discussion we had about how honest those two countries are being.
Re-education camps probably aren't
probably not counted.
Right. And also, in some places, you just die.
Yeah. Those
that's true.
You don't go to prison if you're dead.
Not usually. No.
Nope.
But we do. We've got a lot of people in prison.
Still, traffic is horrible.
Sorry. Well, that's because you're in the suburbs.
It's true.
So we do have this going on, and so, but these aren't like on the street questions. These are now bigger legislative questions. It's questions about who we allow to have a voice in who is writing our legislation and laws, and who should be going to prison and for what. And it's when you start looking at what crimes are, like you go to, when you had the 80s and 90s where you're going to get 3 strikes and you get 25 to life for, dime bag of weed. And now, here's the thing. I'm not saying like if, a dime bag of weed's illegal that you should be just like get a pass. But it's like, really, is that 25 years worth of stuff, right?
Right.
And, it's, there are so many nuanced things to talk about around that. And these are, and I hate to sound like, that conspiracy guy on the podcast, but there's a money issue here, right? Because we do have private corporations and private prisons speaking into who should be going to prison. And, you can Google that all day long.
Which is weird that they have stores that inmates can spend cash at some of these too.
Yeah, it's a whole thing, right?
Wow. Wow, we're making money off these people that can't spend their money anywhere else. Neat.
Yeah, and
never heard of that before.
Well, and so like, yes, that is part of the conversation. We get back to on the street policing, right? It's contextual, right?
Yeah.
Policing in Columbus, Indiana is different than policing in Chicago or LA or these places where the federal government has set up and like, hey, you know what? You guys got a real problem, right? And so I think one of the things that sometimes I hear is a confusion of the national conversation with my local conversation, because people are very aware because the national conversation is televised and it's like it sells things, right?
Yeah.
And so we hear about that a lot. And again, I think that national conversation is important. And doing this has like changed and shaped a few things about that for me, but I think it's still a thing that we need to have. And then to also look at, well, locally, what are we doing? And so a lot of times people try to solve the national problem by putting the national problem on their local place, which is not always true.
Right.
Yeah.
And so
that's when you get cool parades.
And here's the thing, I was actually out there as I was told I had to go at a former place of employment for the day, and so go out there but I get to hang out with a couple of my officers who are out there, and they're like, no, this is great. This is like the thing that's supposed to happen, is that people are supposed to be able to say the government needs to be held accountable. At the same time, the blank all cops signs, it's like, I had one of my officers
love all cops.
Well, I love all cops. But I had one of my officers point at one of the signs and goes,
all cops.
I saved her kid last year.
Yeah.
Like I did CPR on her kid last year. And so it's like one of those
Dang.
so, and again, because these are people in your community, right?
Yep.
And so in this conversation, in this national conversation about law enforcement and whatnot, when we think about Columbus, so that's the place where I see the most, right? There are things that we can do and things that we are doing, right? So like Columbus has a voluntary accreditation. So every police department has to be accredited by the state of Indiana, and there's a whole thing. But then the city of Columbus and the Columbus Police Department have elected to go through what's called the CLIA certification, which I should know what those letters mean, but it's like really long and fancy.
You
All
told
good.
me
We'll
them
give you a
once
pass.
before, and I don't remember them either.
Yeah, I mean,
Means it's too long.
It means get a better acronym.
the Commission on Accreditation for Law Enforcement Agencies. Thank you, Google. But this is a voluntary international organization that you can join. And so what that means is more oversight. It's questions like every 2 to 4 years, kind of depending on a couple of things, you go through and you have to have updated policies, which in a lot of agencies, that's one of the issues.
Yeah.
Is that policies haven't been updated since 1950, right? What does your training look like? What are your training hour requirements? Are they, and this is not just in the US, this is reflective of global standards. And so this extra accountability and focus on that, and because it is expensive, there is a real impetus for city council to in the mayor's office be like, are you guys doing this thing? Because we're paying for it, right?
Yeah.
And so for the admin to say, we're doing this thing because you're paying for it. And if we don't, right? And so, it's really important to do things like that, right?
And that's probably constantly evolving, isn't it? Like the courses and the material is not the same as it was the year before or 10 years ago or 20 years ago.
Well, yeah, and so part of this, right? So one of the things I got to do with two of the deputies from the county and two of our officers from the city is I went to Lebanon, Plainfield, nope.
Somewhere in Indiana.
Indy, suburb city, and did crisis intervention training. There's too many C's in policing. No
joke.
And so this is specifically about how do we deal with, it's a 40-hour training. It's really intensive. And basically it's to train law enforcement officers. And then me, I was just hi, I'm the chaplain. And, I've got some time and I'm hanging out with my, my people here. But how do you interact with people who are in the middle of a mental health crisis, right? So how do we deal with mental wellness in our community and knowing where those resources are and these sorts of things? And so we initially had 2 officers and 2 deputies in the county. We recently had a training here in Columbus. The Republic covered that. It was pretty cool. Yeah. And we got more officers. I actually got to hear a really cool story recently of one of my officers. She showed up at this house. There was this juvenile who was in a bad spot and talking to the custodial guardian afterwards, because just following up with some, afterwards they called me and hey, they need some resources. Can you call them to follow up on some specific things? And talking to the custodial parent, just how thankful she was that the city had invested in this, because we were talking about how well this officer had done in dealing with their kid and the way that this officer presented and just was present in that home during this really tense moment with mental wellness with this adolescent. And I was like, oh yeah, she's one of our officers who went through the CIT training, and she was just thrilled that there was somebody who showed up and had some understanding and background. And we are having tons of those stories, and this has been a really successful thing. And so this is, when you talk about evolving training and evolving ways of seeing policing, equipping officers to deal with people in crisis, that is not, it's not legal. It's just I'm off my meds or I'm homeless. And, when we talk about homeless people, the homeless population generally has mental wellness issues, which also leads to addiction issues. Right. And you have this whole cycle of things. And so having officers, when they show up, it's they have a more nuanced understanding and being able to say on scene, okay, this is how do we talk this person down, or like how do we connect them with the resources available in our community well.
Right. And some of that stuff before may have even been dismissed because it's like, well, what do we do?
Yeah.
And now it's like, hey, I'm actually educated. I can forward this person with somebody qualified, but it's just having that list of resources, right?
Yeah, and I mean it's things like that when we talk about this evolving conversation around policing and training, right? So that is one of those areas where there is a growing edge. And so in Columbus, being on that edge and being able to figure out how we do that well and how do we interact with those resource agencies, our mental health and behavioral health clinics, with our hospital and healthcare systems, and then also just like trustees and these sorts of things, and knowing what's available in town when we show up and someone's like, I'm an alcoholic for 20 years and I want to be dry. Like I've been on that call with somebody. It was a guy he fell over on the side of the road, and it was with an officer.
I wasn't going to say who is the person, but who do you send people in those situations to? Like, hey, I'm listening, and I got a real problem.
So if you're listening, you have a real problem. So one, I mean, I'm not saying you, but like if
you can assume I'm on your board. So
yeah, no. I was going to save the big reveal that you're on the board till later, and that's how. Like, that's right? The real reason I'm on the podcast.
Well, I need the help more than anyone. What board? Nobody knows.
Yeah, I strong-armed you into this.
Skateboard.
But no, so I mean, we've got some great resources in town. So I love the ASAP Hub, right? It's over there in the United Way building, over just off Central. It's not really off Central, but it's like back behind there, and I forget all the street names. And but they are a great resource for people who are looking for recovery. Like they have it's a clearinghouse for all these meetings and resources. And if you're like, I need to get into a recovery situation, they are helpful in helping you get into recovery, even if you don't have insurance at the moment, because recovery is so expensive.
Yeah.
But we've seen pilot programs across the country. It's cheaper to redirect a low-level drug offender who's using to these types of programs where it's rehab than it is to start the incarceration cycle with them. It's more expensive on the front end, but it's cheaper for us in our as taxpayers over the long run, because they are using less ER services that we wind up paying for. It's really expensive to incarcerate someone, even in a local jail, on misdemeanor and low-level felony charges, than it is to so you've got to compound years and years and years of this. And so but the ASAP Hub is really great at being able to connect people with that, kind of walk through that. Things for families around that, like talking through what are the meetings that are available for your family if you are a person who's got a family member who's in addiction, whether they recognize it or not, how do I get help? Other things that, they have Narcan available for people to be able to get. If you have drugs you need to get rid of, they have things you can go over there and pick up at no cost to be able to do that. And they've set up the place. The thing that they've done really well at the ASAP Hub is they've set it up in such a way that when you go in there, it doesn't feel clinical. It feels like you would go into like any sort of like cafe kind of situation, because like one of the first things you have to do in the situation is affirm someone's human dignity, which so often for addicts or people who are coming aware of like, I've got an issue, to have your dignity affirmed from the time you step into the door is so important, and they do that so well. And like, it's such a great group over there. I mean, you should talk to the ASAP Hub.
I'll reach out to him immediately.
Finally.
But I mean, no, they're doing great work, and that's one of the resources that in Columbus and in Bartholomew County we get to direct people to.
Sweet.
And there's a ton of other ones, but that was the first one that came to mind.
How recent is this? I totally forget the acronym already.
ASAP Hub.
Yeah. How recent is this? All the trainings.
As soon as possible is not good.
You said that they were like constantly like being revised and everything, but it's not like explicitly emergent to the last couple years. Has it been just kind of like a slow build up over time?
Yeah. So when we think about, in my interaction, and again, I can't speak to policy because I don't work for the department. Sure. I volunteer there and whatnot. So again, like grain of salt, and like a grain is like a pretty solid grade. So these trainings, crisis intervention training, yes. Yep. This is a thing that's been around for, a few years, right? But we've been seeing it grow. And the thing about law enforcement is that it's tied into government. And government is like it's a dinosaur, right? Yeah. If you bite its tail, 2 years later, it'll know that something happened, right?
Yeah.
Because that is both like the bane and the good thing about these things. They move slowly, so that there aren't sudden changes. You don't want sudden changes,
Right.
You don't want you don't want
Knee-jerk
generally-
policy.
Yeah, you don't want revolution. You want evolution often,
Yeah.
and kind of policy and these sorts of things, which is infuriating when you're like, I want it now. But
I already forgot what I wanted.
yeah, well, then it wasn't that important. What was I upset about?
Someone tell me why I'm angry.
So you just walked into parenting right there.
Oh no.
If you just like let it ride for long enough, your kid will forget what they wanted, so you don't actually have to do it.
What color's your shirt? And they're like, wait, I'm so.
Did you what?
Why do I feel upset?
Yeah, dadding is the original Jedi mind trick. And so
That's what I do with Tristan. You're mad at something? What? Hey, buddy, here's a donut.
Distraction.
Keys.
We're not going to deal with your actual feelings. We're going to distract you, and you won't have any problems 20 years from now because you want to do it.
Nutri-Grain bar. There's about 20 of them. They're on the stock, but in the back.
And now I'm at ASAP. Huh?
Yeah, you definitely don't want to give
Now I'm
your
at
kid.
ASAP.
You definitely don't want to give your kid 20 Nutri-Grain bars, especially if they're in diapers.
Only if they're wearing diapers.
But
You'd have to put me
Works
in a
on
diaper.
Tristan though.
I don't. Why would you know what? I got so many questions. I've decided I don't want any of the answers. So
Don't blame me.
This episode's not about me.
aren't they all about you at the heart of this?
It's why I made a company.
Yeah, I know.
I
He
hired
wanted
friends.
more things about me.
These are all paid friends.
I mean, sorry. Again, The Office. There you go.
Yeah, that's what I was saying. There's an office thing in there.
Yay! So, So anyway, so like this crisis intervention, it's not new, but it's been like so as it's happened. Departments have seen success, and so it's been one of these things that once officers buy into it, they tell other officers. It's one of those. You tell a friend, and they tell two friends, and they tell two friends, which is a callback to a phone commercial from a company that doesn't exist anymore back in the 1900s, which, I don't think any of you were alive for.
96.
The last 8 years of it.
Oh, I'm so old. MCI, by the way.
gosh.
So, yeah. I think we can give them a free plug because they don't exist, right?
Yeah, MCI.
Yeah,
Official sponsor.
We don't know you, but
If you go back in time, get your long distance service student.
Amazing.
But and then we think about like crisis, critical incident stress management. Which is CISM, which is again this is evidence-based thing that shows up in the 80s, right? Is when we first see it, which is basically first responders. They have a really high suicide rate. We lose some years as many officers to self-inflicted death than we do to being shot on traffic stops and in the streets, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And it's because of everything they take in. And so when we talk about CISM, which is this really cool thing that the state of Indiana has said this is covered in statute, where officers can show up in a group, debrief this incident, and it's covered by statute and it's protected from these kinds of things. Because what we realized is that cops were eating their guns, and firefighters were killing themselves, and EMTs and paramedics. Because
I haven't heard eating your gun before. That's
a
new expression to me.
Yeah, it's probably not one you're going to want to use every day.
No, I was really
Yeah.
confused when you first said it,
Sorry.
and now I get it. Okay.
Yeah.
Sorry to derail.
I was like, you really need to explain what you're about to say, because as he's talking about this very
He's lost on that one phrase
real
you said.
subject.
I
He goes,
too many. Sorry, I couldn't follow the analogy. It took me a minute.
No,
I'm back.
No, I'm glad you caught. I'm glad you
Yeah,
caught up
which
with
end
us.
do you start first?
laughed
Never mind.
first.
So,
Oh no!
but because we're losing so many people to this, right?
Yeah.
And have been historically, and not just, this doesn't include, the alcoholism and these sorts of things. There starts this movement to have these evidence-based debriefs. And again, this starts in the 80s, specifically for first responders. And what we see is that when we do these debriefs in this very specific methodology, you reduce PTSD and you see keeping responders in service. Now, it's not therapy, but it allows for people who are trained, such as myself and some other officers and therapists that do this, to catch these officers or these EMTs or these firefighters or these Department of Natural Resources officers, the game wardens, or whoever else is there on scene, to be like, oh, so that's a thing that we're going to need to talk about. Or to basically, when a group kind of cathartically is able to say this is what happened and goes through this process, it fills in a lot of the blank spots, which is where we know that a lot of these PTSD things start to come from. And being able to sit down with someone and say, like, here's what you saw. That's not a thing a human being's supposed to see.
Yeah.
Which is what we pay first responders for, and we don't talk about it.
Yeah.
It's a really hard job.
But hasn't it been working for years?
Sorry, what?
Just ignoring the problem.
I mean, if by working you mean that we are burning through people at an incredible rate, we are ruining lives like divorce rates are through. Yeah, it's totally working.
Yeah. But I mean, that's the point. Like, that's why it's so important.
Yeah, and it's, again, so for me, like at CPD, I've got these officers who I blank them. I love them, right?
Yeah, blank them.
And, I'm even starting to find a bunch of deputies that I even really like over the county, which is, it's a fun little, like, Northeast rivalry a little bit. They get on pretty fine. We're jealous of their trucks, if we're really honest.
Is that another analogy? Trucks. I don't understand.
No. They have Dodge Rams over there. And so... A lot of the city guys are like, I would like a Dodge Ram for my patrol car.
What they got you guys rolling in?
So CPD is making the transition to Ford Explorers.
Okay, not a Crown Vic, so we're moving up.
Oh,
Crown Vics have been gone for a while, right?
In here, but like
there's counties that still use them.
I mean, IMPD still is rolling Crown Vics.
Yeah, that's true.
And
not Marion County enough.
If you talk to any officer who ever drove a Crown Vic, they love those things.
Really?
Oh, all of them are like, I would take a Crown Vic in a heartbeat. So,
had no idea.
Yeah.
Insider knowledge.
Yeah. I mean, they got the turning radius of like an oil tanker, but. So it's doing these kinds of things to help them because, again, it's just it's just from a practical taxpayer standpoint, it's so expensive to replace a 5-year officer because it's not just replacing like if a 5-year officer walks away or quits or whatever and moves on to another job, it's not just like filling a spot because you have to put someone through ILEA, which is the Indiana Law Enforcement Academy. And even if you find someone who's a transfer, then you're now dealing with like what it takes to equip them, what it takes to like train them, and all the specialties, especially in a department our size. We're like a large, small, medium kind of department, like right there, right? And so, if they're a SWAT officer, if they're detectives, they're polygraph trained, they're a detective, they do, these sorts of things, it's so expensive to train someone up in all those specialties.
Yeah.
And so these are the kinds of things that help retain officers long term, is to have people available for them to resource and to also just like, hey, you look like you're having a bad day, what's going on? And just being able to walk through that and talk it out. I've had a lot of conversations that I won't share here, clearly. With officers. The thing that I tell people often, they're like, so why do you want to be a full-time chaplain? Which is like a thing that I want. Like I want to be a career chaplain. Is that when I go to hang around my officers, whether it's like just, sometimes I'll just pop by the police department because it's right down the street from where I work now. After work, I'll just go by and like, who's there? Or when I'm writing or there's meetings or whatever, I've got stuff going on, is in 3.5 years, because it took about 6 months to build some credibility. In 3.5 years, anytime I've showed up, I've not had what I would call a critical conversation, which is there's an officer who has either something they've seen, something that's going on in their life, or these sorts of things that they need someone to like dump it on. Like, and I don't mean that in like this negative way. They just need like, here's the thing I'm thinking about. And like, am I crazy? Or like, what do I do with this? And to like hear it. And, I mean, honestly, it's, and that's just like the day to day, right? And on the other side of that is like, I get to be part of their lives in lots of really great ways. Some of my favorite weddings are cop weddings. I just did one back in December. It was fantastic.
What do you mean you did a cop wedding?
I performed it. I got to say, do you? You do. And so
you were the guy, the important guy.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I'm the most important guy. I mean,
it wouldn't happen.
You guys have been at the weddings I've done. You've. I mean, some of the best filming that's been done at weddings has been done by TRIFLIX.
A couple.
And I am the most important person at the wedding because everyone's listening to me talk most of the time. Those two don't say anything hardly, and they just repeat after me most of the time.
Do you have a moment that stands out as like? I'm derailing, but
no, it's okay.
With the wedding thing, I mean, you've done enough that we've talked about like some of the wild.
Yeah, I mean, so one of the most memorable ones is my first one, my first wedding, because the maid of honor forgot the ring. And so we used one of the bridesmaids had like a bubble, like a gumball machine ring.
Yeah.
And so we used that for the ring for the first like 20 minutes of the marriage.
Like somebody just had one of those rings sitting around. They're like, it's just she brought
was
it just in case.
I think she was like 20 or 19, and so it was just like a laugh for her. But then it was like super critical. So the small things in life can sometimes become the most important. And I think for like as far as wedding days, like a lot of wedding days are really great. One of my favorite things to do, especially with my officers, and I've gotten to do it with some people that whose weddings have done, and who's had other people do their weddings, is like just talking through premarital counseling and walking through like, hey, what are the things that are coming up and whatnot. And because I think Luke Erb did yours.
Luke Erb.
Yeah, Luke Erb has got a ton of mentions on your podcast, or at least a very extended one in one episode. And I wanted to bring that up.
He's a tricky guy to get on here.
Yeah, I was going to say.
He's a busy boy.
As much as you guys love to talk about, Luke Erb was responsible for, I think it was 49% of your marriage or whatever. I'd like to say that I've been on the podcast twice, so I am meeting Luke
You're
Erb.
the other 51.
Yeah.
I'd like to meet this guy at some point too. So
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
He's a blast.
Yeah. So,
not as fun as John.
I mean, who is this one? Is John?
I guess.
He said something nice, and it threw me off. I was like, what do I do with that?
Wait, what?
He doesn't.
I'll be the only one.
Yeah, the compliments, man. Those are weird.
But anyway, but like, getting to be part of that process, and like even just hearing the stories of how they, found each other and that sort of thing. So So yeah, I mean that's kind of the stuff that I love to do in chaplaincy, which is just like that kind of like side gig. Now, chaplaincy itself is agnostic, right? So it's not necessarily Christian or Muslim or whatever. Some chaplains have kind of religious sort of backgrounds. I happen to, but
not a requirement.
Not a requirement. Sometimes people are therapists or whatever. And one of the things that my officers know is like most of them know that I was a pastor at one point, and but they also, I mean, are pretty aware that I'm not going to like get in the car and be like, let me talk to you about the Bible, son. Because there's no way to make it weird
in your back pocket for every situation.
Yeah. No, I wish I were that good, but I'm not.
I like the foghorn leghorn thing going on too.
Well, I've got all sorts of various pastor voices depending on who I need to make fun of. I usually use my own voice because I'm usually making fun of me. So, but it's, you just get in and you bring your experience with you to whatever is going on. So, yeah.
So what about you?
What about me?
Like,
you've
probably seen things, right?
Yeah, no, I've got a therapist.
Yeah, like I was sitting here thinking about it, like this whole thing has to be kind of a endless circle of like helping each other because
gosh, who's the therapist talk to? The therapist.
I could not imagine.
So like,
no, I mean,
therapist.
No, I mean that's it's like a real thing, right? And so I'm in a couple of I started one. I'm in a couple of different groups, like online Facebook groups where chaplains talk to each other.
Okay.
I'm a member of the International Conference of Police Chaplains with my basic credentialing, and so those relationships with other chaplains, and then like seriously, like and I'm pretty open with all my officers that I do have a therapist, right?
Yeah.
And not just because of them. I bring my own anxiety to the table as well.
Well, at the base of it, we're all human, right?
Yeah. So because the way that sometimes I was talking to was we were looking over, because I mean I think the big reveal here at some point is I'm going to talk about like this thing that I'm starting.
Yes.
Whoa.
But what? So, but I mean, when I was talking to the board and putting like a budget in front of them, and there's a couple things in there, and it's like the thing that I want you to know is that I'm co-traumatized with my officers. Because I go to the same car accidents, and I sit I go to these scenes, and there's some of the things that you've read in the paper, if like I say in the paper or online in the Republic before the paywall went up. I know. Listen, you got to make money in local media now, but
keep making the paper smaller and everything.
Yeah, which leaves room open for local corruption. It's a whole thing. I'm not saying there's local corruption. I'm just saying that like the local paper is like so much more important than most people recognize. reliable local media that has a broad platform is so important to accountability for local government, and that's a thing I'm a huge fan of. Anyway,
Next Door app.
Also, ours got bought out by Chicago.
No, yeah.
He got bought by Chicago.
Yeah, I mean, there's like 4 or 5 major media outlets who are buying up local papers, but that's a whole separate podcast we can do.
I was going to say, yeah.
But anyway, so these things that you read about in the paper are so tragic and so terrible. Like in the background of that, a lot of times you don't see it because we're not people, is the way that I like to put it. But myself and the other chaplains are there.
Yep.
And so, like, if you think back over the past, 12 months even, 12, 18 months, some of the most tragic moments in this community, one of us have been there alongside officers as things are happening. And that's, our role is not like investigations, it's not policing, it's not these sorts of things. We are there to be with the family and to help the helpers.
Yep.
And so in that moment, the convenient thing, like I'm a dude, I just put everything that's like my stuff in the nothing box for a while, and then deal with, the other people who put their stuff in the nothing box and be like, no, give me your nothing box. Let's what's going on? How are you doing right now? And then following up with them, right? And then sometimes assisting in various aspects of that. But then later it's like, I need to get into my own nothing box because I love my wife and I love my kid and I want to be like decent around other people, and So
I might be quoting you. You might have told me this, but like the general trend of like what I'm kind of seeing between like all of this and what you've kind of been interacting with is remembering the human behind like every person that you're interacting with, whether it's like someone like working behind a counter or like the person you're trying to apprehend or the cop or whatever. Yeah. There's a human there, and you need to understand like what's going on and all these other things that are causing these actions to happen, and it's really like critical to like identify and also help in the right ways and how to address those things.
Absolutely. Like every human being has a story.
Yeah.
And very rarely do people are people the villain in their own story. And so
I would love an exception.
I mean, there are rare occasions. I'm sure, because you want to say never, but then you're like, I'm sure somebody out there is
somebody's like, I'm really like, if you can't be number one, let's just aim for the bottom.
It's the whole Dr. Horrible sing-along blog situation. Just trying to cram in as many pop culture references as possible in this podcast. I love it. But yeah, there's a story everywhere, and even and so just recognizing and remembering that, and then also, in the midst of all of that, those stories don't excuse the terrible things that human beings sometimes do to one another. And
it's the other side.
Like there is this really difficult tension for more so for people in law enforcement than even the other agencies, because a fire truck shows up, everyone's a huge fan, right? Like,
oh yeah.
The old joke is like, what's the difference between a firefighter and a cop? Everyone's excited when a firefighter shows up. If EMTs, one of the things that they get to do or that is helpful for them is they are part of physically rescuing somebody a lot of times. And so with that comes a lot of other specific things, but then cops show up and it's like they see the work. I mean, daily, they very rarely see people at their best.
Nobody starts sweating when they see a firefighter.
No. I mean,
kind of.
I mean, it depends on how close you are to the fire.
You get that,
or there's that too.
The 12-month calendar out, and you're like, whoo.
Listen, I have no opinions on. I don't want to engage the fireman.
We're not here to talk about firefighters, all right?
Listen,
we're here to talk about.
I don't know
John
that Fred
Bundick
Bundick needs to be in a calendar for firefighters. It would be him with a fishing pole, hanging out, fully clothed in a flannel. That's what that firefighter calendar would be.
I'm going to say it officially. If TRIFLIX ever had the option to do any sort of public service calendars, I think that would be awesome.
Firefighters,
just any public service. If they want a calendar, hit us up.
Reach out.
I want to be a part of making this.
Hey, we could get
this
all the chaplains.
All the chaplains.
The chaplain calendar.
Dude.
I'm the youngest chaplain in the county, so
i.e. the most attractive, right?
Yes. No.
You'd be the reason we'd sell these calendars.
No.
We can workshop it, Tristan. We can table it for now.
We'll come back.
If there was ever a thing that I wanted edited out of a podcast, it would be
It
just
would be
this
this
action
part.
right here.
Just
'Cause, like,
this?
I am so rad right now, you just can't tell. So, it's like, I know what to do with it.
Yeah. So
My goodness.
there's a difference. There's a difference between how excited people see certain law
Yeah.
service
So-
to the public.
Yeah. So anyway, so all this
My
clearly is a
goodness.
thing I care about. Maybe not so much the calendars. Hopefully, no one knows what I'm talking about because you did cut that out. You did not cut that out. Nope. And
It'll be the highlight.
We'll be honest with you.
that'll be the real.
Be the first
so-
clip that comes out.
So one of the things that I
Sorry.
The teaser clip.
Yeah, right. So what month on the calendar are you?
so congratulations
John's
on
on.
like finally hitting a point where
I've never
I'm a little
seen.
speechless.
I've never seen you embarrassed before.
I
so
know,
this
right?
is quite amusing to me.
I don't know why, but I feel good about myself.
We're good hosts. We are.
I feel bad.
I mean, you guys. Collectively, the
high-fiving
Terry
you.
Gross
Get
of
out of
Columbus,
here.
Indiana. There you go. Which is high praise because I do love some fresh air. We're a big NPR family. I'm not going to lie to you. We do have the NPR tote bag. So if
gosh.
TRIFLIX ever does a tote bag, I will gladly rock your tote bag at the farmer's market. Just so you know.
We'll have tote bags in our metaverse section that you can carry around our virtual store.
Yep, right next to the calendars.
Our NFT calendar.
Yeah, there we go. There we go.
I mean, he did sign the paper. We could probably use your likeness on an NFT.
Oh, dude,
Yeah.
just
Calendar.
deep fake. Just
That's
throw his face. We can do video
no.
calendars.
This face is not going to sell much of anything. So
We'll make it work.
I don't know, man. I don't know.
They're
It's-
humble. You're very humble.
well, thank
Yes.
you. So.
You're too
anyways,
kind.
This is me pivoting to. So
I gotcha.
I'm really
Yes.
passionate
Do you
about
get to
this thing.
carry a gun?
I do not.
No gun.
So no, there's no gun.
Are you provided a gun or you're told not to have a gun?
I am not provided a firearm.
Yeah.
And so no, I don't carry a gun. So for
Okay.
a couple of reasons. So some departments have different rules or whatever and whatnot. So in Columbus, chaplains don't carry, and there's lots of great reasons for that. Totally fine with that. I'm with people who carry guns, so it's fine. Generally speaking, I don't find myself on a ride in a situation that's, the most lethal situation for a chaplain statistically is actually a domestic disturbance because everyone's like, hey, go get a religious guy or someone like that in here. That is not usually going to calm the situation down.
Yep.
There's a great Firefly quote about that. And so no, I don't carry. I do shoot, and I've done I qualified earlier this year on the course. It doesn't matter. It doesn't mean anything. But basically, that meant
Feels
that,
good though.
I mean, it does. It does. I mean,
Heck yeah.
do you get a vest? Like
That's a good
you don't get
question.
shot at?
fun story.
SWAT gear.
I do not. So
I'm not a fan of that.
So
I
like
hope
an
no
oversight.
criminals are listening.
Don't go for the
I'm
chaplain.
generally the biggest target out there anyway. So probably unless.
Come on, buddy.
No, it's all right.
Because he's got the shiniest smile. Look at him. He's always so happy, positive.
Something like that.
Yeah.
But no, I don't.
Gleeman.
I don't get a vest. I have a pretty cool bag that I put together of stuff that's like stuffed
Okay.
animals and like flashlights and tourniquets and.
Why the animals?
It's a weird
Okay.
mix.
This seems
'Cause-
unique.
Children.
Yeah, children.
Yeah.
So when you show up at like a death scene or car accident or something like that, little kids and surprisingly even kids up to like 12 or 13, a lot of times like handing one of the things I'll do, I was on a car accident on US 31. It was first shift. And we get there, and there are 3 kids in the car. 2 are probably about 6 and 10. And so they are clearly distraught. It's a traumatic event being in a car accident, especially if you're a little kid. Everything in your world's just been shattered, and glass is shattered all over the road.
Right.
And so my officers are kind of working the scene. They're doing their stuff, getting the information, and so go to the car that with the guy I'm riding with, who incidentally was the guy who got me into this whole thing to begin with. Okay. And so out of the car, I grabbed these two stuffed animals and I was carrying with them because I generally carry about 3 or 4 with me at a time. And so I was like, hey, because the youngest at the time was clinging on to mom, and so I went to the middle one who was distraught and just kind of walking around and just in her own space. And I was like, hey, this is my buddy Todd. Could you take care of Todd for me? And this little girl like grabbed Todd, which is like a weird name to pick for like a stuffed bear, but like it was the name that came to me in that moment. And it's like Todd is like hers, right?
Yeah.
And it's like, hey, Todd just needs a good friend. Can you take care of Todd for me while I go talk to some other people, and I'll be back to check on you and Todd in a little bit. And she's like, I can take care of Todd. And like she's like she's like at this point like she got from behind like like that like courageous kid like I can do this, right?
So I can picture it's making me misty thinking about it.
That's awesome.
And so then the other one is like I don't know if you've ever seen the National Geographic where you've got like the little baby chimpanzee like gripping on a mom, like it's that sort of. I mean, your dad, you've got that. Like,
I know.
So I go up to her. I was like, hey, this is my. I think it was like Bob. It was like some other like generic American name, and I was like,
Todd,
this is Bob. Todd and Bob. It was like, hey,
I can't think of anything more than 3 letters.
Todd has 4. Thank you.
Well, that's okay.
I mean,
it's usually 2 Ds.
Yeah,
I didn't know that.
I guess
I'm learning so much on this episode about things that are very
well,
irrelevant.
education is what I bring to you. So, but like same situation. Like, hey, can you? And like again, so what this does is this frees up like mom to like begin to like insurance information, the next kind of things. And then like as I'm sitting there on the side of the road talking to these 2 kids, and like as they're getting ready to leave, the one I gave Todd to comes up. He's like, "Do you want Todd?" I was like, "No. I think Todd's happy with you. Todd, are you happier with her?" And I was like, "Oh yeah, Todd's totally happier with you." And like it was at that point she lost it, right?
Yeah.
She's thank you so much. And then like but like so like yeah, that's like the stuff they carry.
That's awesome.
Winners, emergency blankets as well, because like when we run into like the homeless population or whatever, it's basically just stuff also to kind of do that kind of thing. Like at some point if you ever want to do like I can bring the bag in. We can like do the whole thing. You can see everything that's in there. But yeah, so
that facilitates your job.
Yeah.
No,
but I don't get a vest is the long answer to that. So, yeah. So
wow.
Yeah. Well, there you go.
Okay, gun vest. One of the other questions we had, I think this was mine, is
I'm glad you owned it.
I'm going to. Is scared straight? Is that a real thing?
So I'm not a jail chaplain.
So there's also a jail chaplain.
Oh, yeah. So there are chaplains who
It's
work.
like a whole underground community.
Oh yeah. I mean, there's mutual respect between the jail chaplains and the street chaplains, but we got a different game going on over on the street. So, so jail chaplains again, their focus is on the incarcerated, and then also the jail deputies in like the county, right?
Okay.
And so they provide services and are available for them, and but a lot of what they do is kind of that restorative work in the jail and like helping bridge services and being kind of that thing there, right? And so, but scared straight statistically we know does not work for lots of reasons.
So what is the thing they still do?
I don't know if they still do it.
Okay.
I'm assuming someone out there is trying to do it. There was an episode of season 1 of The Rookie about this, I think. Yeah, it was season 1. Yeah. I'm a big Nathan Fillion fan. And so, I mean, the show's gone off the rails since then, but whatever. Anyway, the point is that like the adolescent brain does not respond to fear in the way that an adult brain does. It's because the prefrontal cortex isn't fully developed and these kinds of things. This is youth ministry coming out. Yeah. And so you cannot, like, if you show an adolescent a picture of someone who is scared, they won't read it. Almost 100% of the time they read it as anger.
That's what they've experienced.
Well, it's because fear is a really nuanced emotion to read on somebody else.
Yeah.
And there's all these fascinating things as to why that is in neurology and in like neuroscience. And then the other thing is they just don't respond to like, you can't scare adolescents into things. So like you can't. You can add education, but there's a whole there's a ton that goes into getting an adolescent brain to make better choices, and it's a lot of effort, and it takes a long time, and it's not a one-off, right? It's mostly relational, actually. And so scared straight is, and again, mostly what kids find out is like you go to jail, and for a day someone screams at you and makes some vague threats that they're not going to follow through on because they can't, and then you go home and it's like that wasn't so bad, which is also part of the reason why, JDAI, which I'm supposed to remember all the letters for, but I don't off the top of my head, exist. And so basically what we know is if a kid spends one night in detention, they statistically are so much more likely to be in prison years later. In fact, juvenile detention is sometimes called the prison superhighway. It's one of the best predictors of going to prison. So trying to avoid getting kids in detention, because anytime you introduce a kid to the system, basically you normalize it.
Yeah.
So, it's a thing that people have done. It's not got a great success rate. What's better is maybe better education opportunities, opportunities for adults to mentor, and then poverty a lot of times, like poverty interventions, kind of figuring out that situation, working on that, and creating opportunities for mom and dad to do better. Also dealing with addiction and that sort of thing. So if you want like something that's good, again, because it's not about a heroic moment, it's about a long-term empathetic movement towards the student, right? Which is why we need more adults to actively care about adolescents and children in a healthy way. So.
Yeah. I'm really glad I asked the question. That was a great answer.
So now you know, as a parent, the best thing to keep your kids out of jail.
You're right.
Don't let them go to detention. And basically, just be present as a father, man. It's hard being a dad. I only got a 5-year-old and about to be 6. He's pretty cool. Beowulf, which is not his real name, but it should be.
Nickname.
But
we'll work it in there somehow, right?
I mean,
you're gonna make it happen.
We'll have him on here and we'll call him Beowulf.
Yeah, I mean, he will have no idea what you're talking about.
That's okay.
I've tried to introduce it to him, and I can't wait for us to read the Beowulf epic. I think I'm gonna hold off. I'm gonna try and hold off until like 2nd grade. I don't know if I'm gonna make it that long. So
I get it though. Want the full thing to sink in.
Yeah,
I get it.
So
it'll happen.
Yeah. So anyway, yeah.
So we've talked plenty, I believe, about the Chaplain. Thank you, by the way. That's great information. Seriously, it's been an enlightening journey.
I've enjoyed the journey as well.
Because you are correct. I'm not going to sit here and tell you that I know all the answers or I really know all the problems.
Yeah.
So it's thank you for sharing. So
I mean, school taught me just as much about taxes as it did teach me about what you do. So
I know, right?
I bet a lot of people don't know either. So.
Yeah.
By the way, you should get your W-2s if you haven't gotten those yet, if you're watching this, because your taxes are due by April 15th.
I'm looking at you.
Yes. Yes. Or David's still waiting on his 1099.
Oh, I'm putting the heat on Tristan.
I'm putting it on my CPA. She sent it, and she's putting it on the mail.
Just next person in line.
Next one, man.
Yeah.
That's
next
how
one.
it works.
This is a familiar thing.
So, next one. Good segue. Next thing. So, the big thing that we haven't talked about yet.
Yeah.
I really don't know anything about this other than...
I thought it was best to leave him in the dark so he could ask as many good questions as possible.
The only issue is I don't know why you picked this man to be on your board.
Because I wanted to be on this podcast. This was the long game,
You
right?
could just ask me.
Oh, snap.
Yeah.
Oh, man,
I'm fired.
I can't even fire you anymore. I'm not like so.
Yeah.
It's true.
So,
So what are you doing, man?
So I am the founder and then no longer on the board of the Foundation for Law Enforcement Chaplaincy. It's we're in the process.
What an intro.
I know, right? But I put together a board, basically, this organization, Foundation for Law Enforcement Chaplaincy. Tristan's on the board, and I picked him for lots of great reasons. He's a great connected person, and he asks a lot of great questions. He brings a lot of organizational talents to it. He introduced us all to Trello the other day at our board meeting.
It's amazing.
And yeah,
I'm proud of you, Tristan.
So
I just want to
he's
say
come a long way.
He has. Like, I've known Tristan since, like, what was it, your sophomore year of college, something like that?
I think we've probably been around 20 at the time.
Yeah.
Give or take a year.
Yeah, and so,
No, it would have been younger because I had my first drink with, or second drink with the small group.
He doesn't
remember.
That was
was
a lot more drinks and
So
stuff.
I would have been 20. It's been a long time together.
You mean 21?
You were 21 when that happened, right?
Yes.
Okay. So
The second drink.
Okay.
The first one was in France.
Oh, okay.
Oh, so there you go. You're good.
Oh,
I've always been legal.
France, it's basically just water, right?
Police-centric podcast. Always been legal.
It's like, was I party to something that wasn't supposed to be? No.
Incriminating.
But no, Tristan, you've grown up immensely. Like, I am so proud of who you are. No, seriously, like the development over time, and just seeing you like live out like a passion and a vision, and like getting to see that happen, and occasionally being able to like poke and be like, oh, that's really cool. Thanks, man. Like, it's been really cool to see. Like, it has been a thing to it's great. Like, and honestly, so
we appreciate your pokes, because it's always fun whenever John Bundick.
Oh my goodness.
Gets to stop by and
one day, buddy.
One day. You'll figure it out.
I'm from the Midwest, where we say fur.
You about to say I'm from the South.
Can you say drown?
Drown?
Yeah. You usually say drowned. Like
Drowned?
It's like, I drowned
you know
this.
what? Hey, you know what? Ignore the haters.
How many Krogers do you go to?
I seen that. I saw that.
My dad does that.
I'm going to Kroger's.
Just adds an S to everything.
What kind of cloth do you use to clean yourself?
A towel?
A washcloth.
I use a washcloth. Sorry.
Washcloth?
Anyway.
We could go down the whole list of
But I
Midwestern
appreciate
terms.
the compliment.
Yeah.
But tell us more about the board. And,
the board.
And why you're not on it.
Yeah. Why'd you make a board to not be on the board?
Yeah, man.
Okay, so created the organization, did all the paperwork with the IRS and these sorts of things. And basically, the Foundation for Law Enforcement Chaplaincy, or FLEC for short, exists basically to support chaplaincy in law enforcement and first responding agencies, and then directly to provide direct services for first responders. And centric around law enforcement, because that's where my personal passion is.
Yep.
To the bane of my firefighter father. So created this thing, found a bunch of like really high quality people to sit on the board, and what I need for my board is what I can't do, which is I need people who care about the work, who don't really want to be like doing the work, and like by that I mean not in like some sort of like derogatory sense, but like they're interested in supporting the work by finding people who are invested, like either like are willing to invest in like financially, willing to invest time, willing to invest like opportunities, that sort of thing, and to kind of expand that out beyond like this is a thing that John Bundick's super passionate about, right? And so they don't need me to do that. What they need me to do is to like do chaplaincy stuff and do some day-to-day kind of like things. So, but I think on LinkedIn, I'm going to put founder on my LinkedIn profile.
There you go.
It sounds better than like former board member.
True.
But I mean, also, like, it's not that you weren't passionate about it. From what I understood, it had a lot to do with like, the paperwork gets more confusing and more difficult.
Yeah, there's that too.
When you run a business, there's like the difference between being a member and an owner and a founder, and all that makes a difference to the IRS. And sometimes it's best just to like do what's simple for the IRS, so you don't have to deal with it.
Yeah, my only IRS thing I was going to talk about, because I know that the NSA is listening to us right now,
All the time.
was just to be like, hey, get your W-2s and your taxes in, because I don't want I don't want to upset that apple cart too much, because we're still in the process of getting our 501c3 status, and I have no reason to think that we're not going to get it.
Might as well make it
until this gets released.
I mean, they basically said that you could probably start doing all the charity stuff, right?
Well, they actually did. So, there's because the way the IRS works with not-for-profits is once you've applied, you can operate as a not-for-profit for up to 27 months, which allows you to do things like start bank accounts and these kinds of things and start collecting money. The only thing I have to tell people is like, hey, at the end of the year, if we've not gotten status yet, it won't be tax deductible, but we also don't go to jail for like, saying, can you give us money, and misrepresentation or whatever. And so
that's nice.
Yeah, no, it is really nice. And so we that's where we're at right now, is we're in that process.
Okay,
and
cool.
One of the goals right now, again for the board, separate from me, and unless I heard that they're still on board with this, is like I said, I would love to transition to career chaplaincy, which is basically my life would be 36 to 60 hours a week, depending on the week and depending on the situation, with my officers on the street, like also bridging that gap between community organizations, because again, my officers and deputies and firefighters, like they all have their specialties. And what I got to do in Columbus for so long is build this network of people who are not-for-profits, right? And so whether that's United Way, it's the ASAP Hub, it's like Community Downtown that, Community Church Columbus runs.
Shout out Scott Hunley.
Yes, Scott Hunley.
Yeah.
I mean, like, Scott Hunley doesn't love that guy.
Oh my gosh, yes.
Yeah, right? and like, or whatever it is. So it's like last winter, right? We had that cold snap come through, and you know, the thing I got to do was say, hey, why don't we, look, I'll just ask. And when I asked people for hats, gloves, coats, blankets, and that kind of stuff, we actually got so much at my house, people dropped off from like one single Facebook post because people in Columbus genuinely care about doing good things. Well, we have a very generous community here. Is that we were able to share with other agencies and that sort of thing. And so being able to make those kinds of connections and whatnot is like, that's what I would do with like, you know, that time. Continue some training and these sorts of things. And this would allow me, I think, to serve our community better. And so the way that we've kind of set this up is that, and, you know, I've talked with the mayor's office, talked with the admin over at CPD, and they're on board with this, is that basically, I'm trying to grant write and fundraise our way into full-time chaplaincy for myself, and then trying to reproduce this at other agencies in our community. Because it is so important for our officers and our first responders to have reliable people that they know and trust to be able to direct them towards good and solid resources and to be a resource themselves.
Yeah.
And it's a very specific thing that I do, but it's a thing that I love. And I think I'm good at it. Which, you know, 22-year-old John, not good at saying what he's good at. 37-year-old John can do it and not throw up in his mouth. So, yeah.
Well, I think
congrats on that.
The important thing here is, to me, and the reason I wanted to be a part of the board when you reached out was a lot of these positions throughout the U.S., these chaplaincy positions, are hired by the organization, isn't that right? Or in some capacity, like they're funded by the municipality that they're a part of?
So there are basically two types of chaplains, just like there are two types of firefighters, right?
Okay.
There are volunteer firefighters and there are paid firefighters.
Right.
The vast majority of American firefighters are actually volunteer firefighters.
Wow.
They also suffer the highest number of fatalities annually as firefighters, more so than professional or paid departments. They actually volunteers prefer you say paid, because volunteer firefighters are just as dedicated and professional, and I think that's about as nice a thing as I'm allowed to say about firefighters. Later I'll make a joke about couches and sitting in their recliners, but already did it. So chaplains are basically, I don't know what the actual number would be. If I were to venture guess, I would say about 95% of chaplains in the U.S., if not more, are volunteer.
Right. But sorry, maybe I didn't explain that. I was referring more to the ones that do this full time and are able to pay their bills, not the ones that just voluntarily when they have time, or maybe they're supported through other means so that they have the ability to do it. So if a chaplain wanted to have a career where they make the majority of their income that can sustain them and their family, is it still like a 50, the random percentage, but it's still kind of like grays on the area? Yeah,
I mean, the chaplains I know that are paid, that I've met, one of them he's got a not-for-profit as well. He's up in Elkhart, Indiana, and he's kind of a legend in lots of ways. He's about to become the president of the ICPC. He's a great guy. He's a Marine, and that's how he shows up everywhere.
That's awesome.
And the other guy that I met is out in San Diego, and he's actually basically his church has paid for 20 years, paid his salary to be the San Diego West Chaplain. So he's only been the chaplain for the West Division of the San Diego Police Department, which right now has, when I talked to him, at 256 officers. There are 45 languages spoken in just the West Division.
Oh my gosh.
And he's been just in that division for 20 years. And for 20 years, his church has paid, basically as a missionary position, his full-time salary to do that. And so most people have non-governmental funding or like in part funding from some other, unless you get into major metros. Yeah. But like, even as far as I know, the Indiana State Police don't pay their chaplains.
So that's why it's cool to me is I find it similar. It's like it's an entrepreneurial thing where you may not be doing it for the money, or there wasn't like a call sheet or something like that, or there wasn't some job description. You're like, I'm going to go apply for this. That sounds like fun. This is something that was like purely passion, where I really want to make a difference, and I think this is a way I could do it, and I find something either relatable or inspiring about it, and then you put in a ton of work both voluntary without any pay, and then you're at the point where you're like, I would prefer if I could put in 100% of my effort, and even more than that, because I mean, most people say 40 hours is the work week, and you were posing well over that, and I know a lot of people do that in general, but it's, to me, that's what really pushed me to be a part of it, is like, this is something you actually want to do to make a difference for the community. And if that's anything that I can support because you're a good friend, then of course I want to support that. You've supported us doing the same thing.
Oh, I appreciate it. And I mean, like, again, just before this, I was talking to my friend Cam Collins, who we went to middle school and high school together. And,
Shout out Cam.
What up, Cam? We're supposed to get coffee in the next couple weeks again on purpose. As I was, getting coffee or whatever, talking to him, and we both are basically at 37, sort of starting our lives over professionally. And if you'd said to me at like 14 or 17, hey, at 37, you are drastically going to change the direction of your life professionally.
Yeah.
I would have lost my mind, because at this point, my mind, I would have been at the place I was just going to be in a rhythm and just, so this is a restart. And it is a weird place to be at 37. I spent like seven or so years of my life coaching, especially like 20 somethings, on like how to do life, right? And how to like, really, here are the mistakes that I made in my 20s, don't make the same ones, and this sort of thing. And then I am now looking at some of that stuff myself again at 37.
Yeah.
And it's weird, and it's difficult, and Luke Erb has coached me a lot.
Shout out.
Dang.
But no, I've had it has been great to be able to talk to a lot of my mentors about this, and good friends and whatnot, as I've been making this transition in life to be able to do this. Because again, not everyone gets the opportunity to even chase down to do the thing that I love, right? If you think about musicians, so many musicians, they never get paid to do that thing that they love to do, but they do it as, a side gig or for fun or whatever.
And then they sign a contract, and people think they're making big money, but it's still going to somebody else. But they still keep doing it because they love it.
Yep.
Yeah, and then eventually are contractually obligated to do it.
Yeah, in some ways.
Yeah, so I mean, just even the pursuit of this dream and this passion that has like slowly emerged has been worth it. And I mean, one of my it sounds real dumb, right? Like the things that matter to you. But as I'm getting ready and I'm trying to like put together like basically this like, hey, you guys should really support me in this thing that I'm doing, I asked my officers to like, hey guys, it's super narcissistic, but could you like tell me why it's important to have chaplains around, and like if you have any story specifically about like me or whatever, like I know it's awful to ask, like it's like, because again, it's like you've got to sell yourself to like do this thing, which is a weird thing to do. For years, like because like for me, like I just love these people and I love what they do, and I love being there with them to help them do it better, not by doing the work but helping them, right?
Yeah, you're facilitating.
And the feedback and the things that they said, it was really good to hear. And like one, just the number of people who actually responded, right, to this like call for like, guys, I want to hang around all the time. Is that okay? And if so, could you say some things that were like not terrible about me or chaplaincy? And then to actually read those comments, and then just to hear them ask on a regular basis, hey, what's the status? Like, when are you going to be here all the time?
Oh, that's awesome, man.
Because one of the key things to understand about the first responder community is that trust is everything. And so, I mean, one of the things I did get in the feedback was from one of my officers was like, when Bundick first showed up, we thought like, why is he here? And is he like spying on us, or like is he reporting back to somebody?
Are we in trouble? Why?
Like, I mean, it was like, because it's like, who's this new? Like, he just showed up out of nowhere. And it's like, I don't know. But then the follow up to that, like, that comment was like, but then like we trust him and we want him around, and so that has been a thing, like just in that feedback and hearing that back, and just knowing. Like you say, like, I'm not paid for it, but like I genuinely have people that love and care for me, and have shown up. Like when I had COVID, they're like, I mean, it was like beautifully inconvenient when I had COVID October of last year. Like I was not in the hospital, but I was like going like 10 steps, like, busting
out the inhaler.
Oh yeah. It gave me asthma. It's the gift that keeps on giving. And but like, so many texts and calls like, hey, what do you need? Can we bring food? And, I had like 3 or 4 officers who did actually, they or their wives or whatever, or their husbands, like, dropped off food at my house. Just constantly asking, what can we do to help you out? And it was just this, it was really beautiful to be carried by this community in that moment, right? And also circling way back to the conversations about, the national conversations about policing. January of last year, I did the department every year does bias training, and like basically how do we like deal with those kinds of things, right? Like how do we deal with diversity and whatnot and whatnot. And so what I got asked to do by our training sergeant was, hey, so I've heard your stories about actually it was the thing that we did that David and I did over in Shelbyville.
Yeah.
It was either that
the
or
live stream.
Yeah, it was either that live stream or the one that we did that was like the podcast from Studio like 1.5.
Yeah, unspoken.
Yeah. And so she's like, I watched the whole thing, heard your stories, and I want you to tell your terrible stories to our officers. Because they trust you and they know that you don't hate them.
Well, that's like the biggest difference whenever you have like a public speaker that's supposed to be coming in to educate, and you're like, oh, here we go again, or so-and-so. But like the difference in situations like this that I think is really cool is just the fact that there is that established relationship of not just bleeping, loving, but there's also that mutual respect between you two. It's not just, oh, here's the guy that tells us, why do you feel that way? And, how are you doing? Like there's actually a relationship, and you've seen things together. You've experienced good and bad, and Chipotle and
so much Chipotle.
The before and after of Chipotle.
My point is, like, I'm sure they had a better experience, or they actually took away something more meaningful than if you just went out to a random crowd.
Yeah. Oh, and the thing is like, so I did that and told like the stories of like getting pulled over in Trafalgar and some other incidents I've had, and the threatened lynching and these sorts of things. And then what I got and what I'm still getting is these ongoing conversations a year later about when we look at like national trials or these incidents, or just even, I've been thinking a lot about, especially in those like 3 or 4 months after I did the training, I would say with a number of officers, just conversations about, hey, this is a thing I didn't think about, or one of my officers shared with me, because one of the things I talked about was like, not every black person is from Columbus, and so when they get pulled over by you, what they're thinking, national conversation, not local, right? And they don't know you like I know you, or even like generally how most black people around here understand that, like, they're fine, right? Whatever. And so, like, if it's just like a traffic stop because the taillight's out or whatever, just like when you get to the window and you're talking to them, it's like, hey, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to run your stuff, and as long as, come back clean, I'm going to let you go with a warning, or, I'm going to give you a ticket or whatever. Because, like, knowing what's going to happen is so helpful, right, in that stop. And again, it's seeing the story in the other person and understanding that they may not have the background that I have in these incidents, in these kind of circumstances. Right. Also, most people don't go out of their way to make contact with the police on a daily basis. And you are just the police. So this is your day to day. And so when my officers came back to me and they're like, hey, so, like it was like 2 weeks after the fact, and they're like, I stopped this lady, and I think it was like a taillight out or something like that. And she was clearly like really nervous and just like uptight and anxious when I got there. And I remember the thing you said, like, hey, just let him know what's good. And he goes, I knew she was going to get a warning, and just like, get it fixed, right? And so he goes, hey, I'm going to run your stuff, and that whole thing. And he goes, it was like magic. Like she instantly just like relaxed, and everything was like, she was super cooperative, and she was like she went from being really anxious about this interaction to like, it was fine, right? Yeah. And again, it's because someone I trust told me a story that I believed, and I'm not saying they wouldn't have believed anyone else, but being able to be part of that ongoing conversation and not just giving it once, but being able to be like constantly with our officers as they're kind of processing that and processing national events and these sorts of things has been, as a black guy, a really unique experience that I think a lot of people don't get. So I'm not sure how we started down this road.
I mean, it makes sense. I think that's relatable to anybody with the precedent side of things. It's like the juvenile detention, if that's what you've experienced before, then it doesn't seem that is what you come to expect from situational outcomes. So if you're mistreated in situations, then that's what you come to expect. So then your natural reaction would be, I'm worried. Or if you always get warnings, you might be really confused the first time you get a ticket. Or I mean, if you have parents that are aggressive and their normal response is anger, you would be very confused whenever they're smiling and you did something wrong. Like, it's just these
learned
situations.
Responses.
Yeah, learned responses.
The
Exactly.
that we have,
It's just what you've grown up with, and everybody's just different experience.
So every time I get a warning, I'm like, why? But what did I do to deserve this? You saw my record.
I can pull over 5 times tonight.
It was more like the same month, but yeah.
Don't worry about it.
But yeah, so I mean, and again, just like hearing those stories and being able to interact with those, that's the thing that I think is one of the things that I get to do. Mm-hmm. Anyway, and so
that's awesome, man.
Being part
Seriously.
of that with my with my guys and gals, and I just really respect the work that they do and how hard the job is. And it sounds, like I always feel weird saying it, but like, it's like I know how hard your job is, and just I really appreciate what you do. And so.
No, and I'm sure that goes a long way.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, seriously.
We've been at this for like 3 hours or something now.
No. If it's cool, we've got some kind of stuff that's like a little off the wall that we're gonna do real fast. It'll be fun.
Before we jump in,
all the time in the world. So.
I know what it's like whenever you're in a different position, because it's not a position you made. You have to justify this to people, and it's super awkward whenever you have to go around asking for feedback, and it's like, hey, I know it's kind of weird, but like, I need it's like,
could you give me the Google review?
You dance around it a little bit. Exactly.
We understand.
Say good things about me now.
So I want to put you on the spot with that.
Yeah.
How can people, like right off the bat, coming off of that conversation, how can people support you that aren't going to like, maybe I can leave a review, or is there any other way that I could support you so that you could do this full time?
Yeah. So because I'm still bad at the ask for the money.
Don't worry,
right?
man. I think it's a personality thing, and you may never get there. So I'm just going to keep boosting you. I'm going to keep getting you there.
This is why a board exists, to like ask for money, because I forget to ask about it. Like, let me tell all the stories. Somebody ask for money, John.
I got you, John. Tell them.
So we and I will have all the information to Tristan, because Tristan is the source of the information, weirdly, because he's on the board.
Oh no!
Whoops.
But we'll have some opportunities that people can give via Venmo. We're going to have some other ways. David is graciously designing a website. Once I give him an example website.
Hey, we're all invested in this.
Hey, you know what? Yeah. We've got a website, and we bought it from one of the places that has an opportunity to sponsor you. I won't say their name until I pay you.
Thank you.
You're welcome. And so there'll be some opportunities that way. So we're looking in February to open up individual giving. So the reason why we're going to do individual giving first is because of that IRS like nebulous zone that we're in. So at this point, just because of the way most the way that your tax deduction situation works, most people are just taking a single like deduction or whatever. Clearly, I know a ton about taxes.
Preach.
Yeah. And this is why I hire a person.
Thank you.
So, but they're not going to the tax deduction is not as important. So for a lot of people, it's like, hey, I'd love to give $5, $15, $25, $100 a month. At the end of the year, that's not going to be enough to like deduct from my taxes. So we're going to open that up. pretty soon. So again, there'll be opportunities for one-time gifts. There'll be opportunities to just be like, hey, you know what? We're gonna, just gonna treat this like a Netflix or Hulu or situation. Here's like $9.99 a month. Just take it. I'm gonna forget about it, and there you go. And so we'll be able to take from Venmo, checking accounts, debit or credit cards, that situation. And so we are hopefully by the end of the week that we're filming this, be able to have that going. And so you'll all have the information to put down in like the stuff down below, right?
Perfect.
We'll probably link to the website because that domain shouldn't ever change. And then if you go to the website, that will host all of the places and resources that you can go to access all the stuff.
Yeah, we do have the site. It just parked right now. So it says it's coming soon.
So that's why in the description, regardless of if you are or aren't ready, that domain will always be available. Bookmark it, go check it out, every once in a while. But it'll be ready.
It's www.fleck.org. It's 2 F's at the beginning. Fleck. F-L-E-C.
So I'm glad we were able to help with that a little bit. I know.
No,
it's
okay.
like pulling off Band-Aids, man.
Like this is the thing. And so if you happen to work at a major corporation that's international here in Columbus, and you think that they might want to give money, I would love to talk to you to begin like even just setting that up, because we are anticipating getting our approval by May or June. And so we'd be looking in the second half to start asking for money there, and from corporations. If you're a small business owner, we'll also take your money or whatever you would willingly give to us to like help get this off the ground. Because like I said, we are like, I really want our officers and to succeed, and I want them to do well, and I want to be able to fund things that will make their lives better. And so I know that we're a super generous community. As I applied for a local grant recently, and one of the things that came out was that as they're trying the city's trying to give away some of this money, is that what they found out was a bunch of not-for-profits actually didn't take the money because they had done so well throughout COVID, because people became more giving in Columbus during this, that like it was like they had not like too much money. I mean, I don't know if not-for-profit other than the NFL can have too much money.
Yeah.
So, bazing. But, NFL, if you'd like to give me some money, I'll take yours too. But like, we are a very giving and generous community. And so I just would really love to lean into that and see if we can improve the lives of the people who do so much hard work for us, and see and like just experience things that most of us cannot imagine as a reality in the community in which we live. And so whatever I can do to support them and their families, I'm on board for. So yeah.
Sweet.
Now here's the thing. I don't know. Are we done? Because the whole reason I showed up, other than to like hang out with you, Cole, and you, David. Yeah. Hey, Tristan, how you doing over there?
I already got my compliment. I'm good.
We usually hang out with some coffees anyway, so this is normal for me.
I want some amazing would you rather's. Do you have any amazing would you rather's, or not?
Actually,
I thought you had a hot take.
We had a special.
Oh wait, no. It was if it came up organically.
Oh, okay. All right.
And it didn't. So,
all right.
So that a little mystery there. Maybe someone slide down the street and ask me.
Nothing wrong with that.
You actually don't get a would you rather. You get your own section.
Ooh, okay.
So
there's straight up some questions.
I've known John for a long time, and we've been Facebook friends for a long time.
And
John loves to ask Facebook questions.
I do love to ask Facebook questions.
And you usually don't reply to your own questions.
I do not. I'm more interested in what other people are saying.
We thought it would be fun to ask you your own questions.
Cool.
And,
this is good.
Flip the script.
Can I just stand up and just like walk out now?
No.
Has anyone walked? No one's walked out on you guys yet.
No, you're actually contractually obligated to finish it.
Gotta read that.
Yeah, that's why I signed the paper before.
All right. So okay. Yeah. We'll ask away. We'll see if I
ready.
All
right.
Okay,
take it away.
What's the weirdest thing a guest has done at your house, apartment,
abode?
Yeah.
The weirdest thing is I cannot answer that because I don't know if it's
what's the next weirdest thing,
which is what I'm working through.
Maybe you could just like. Well, it just depends.
all the more reason
PC it a little bit.
to like host our stuff on our own website, man.
No, I've got an off mic answer for you. I think one of the weirdest things that I have had happened at a home that I lived in was I had in Hartford City, Indiana, had a house where one summer my roommate and I had between 4 and 6 other roommates living with us in a 2-bedroom, 1-bathroom ranch house that I was running on the church. It was like right next to where I worked. And so it was just like, it was the hangout house for everybody. Everybody came in. We called it the Smokehouse. Because there was a lady who smoked
a lot of meat.
No, the lady before us actually smoked a lot in the kitchen, and so like the ceiling. When I came in, I had to paint it, and it was all this. Anyway. Gross. So we called it the Smokehouse, and so all summer, so these 6 guys, 4 to 6 guys, depending on the week, were paying us rent and living there. It was great, but what that meant was everybody hung out at our house. So one morning, because I'm the only one who's got like a real full-time job at that point, I wake up at like 8 in the morning, which is still pretty late in the day to be waking up for a full-time job. Yeah.
No judgment.
It's youth ministry. And so
they're not up at 8.
No, I mean, I was up at 10 until 10 or 11 out with students. It's whatever. So I get up and like kind of bleary-eyed, I'm dressed, I'm walking out of my kitchen, and there's some guy sitting in the kitchen making breakfast. And I was like, hey. And I just walked to work. And later that day, I come in and I talked to all of my roommates. To this day, no one knows who that guy was.
Oh, gosh.
So we don't know. He was like, because again, people were in and out of our house all the time.
It wasn't weird to you.
No, it was just like, oh, what's up? And what was weird was after the fact, we were like, was he just in here he cleaned up after himself. So like.
Made breakfast, cleaned up, left.
And walked out. So that's one of the weirdest things that's ever happened in my house.
That's a good story. I like it.
Wow. So.
Looks like the next one. Do you have any friends who do Spider-Man fan art?
In parentheses, a very weird question. I know.
Yeah. So my kid Beowulf. I'm gonna really just lean into that now.
I think you should.
Yeah,
it's a thing. It's fitting.
Right? Like, I mean, maybe we can get a legal name change. He's only had his name for like 5 years.
Yeah,
almost 6.
It's one of those like subconscious things. Like I think if you say it around your wife enough, like maybe one day she'll slip up and say it.
Yeah,
and you'd be like,
joke's on you. I changed my name without telling you. It's official.
You bust out the paperwork. You had it in your back pocket like every single day.
I think that might take both signatures.
Sign here.
So I was at the hospital, and they're like, we need you to check the birth certificate to make sure there are no changes. And I asked at the hospital, I was like, because again, like I hadn't slept in like 2 days or whatever, and the nurse is just like handing this. My wife's like nowhere near. And I was like, so if I make changes, do you have to tell my wife legally? And she's like, I guess not.
They only need one signature.
And so
I just did this.
And she's like, I guess not. No. I go, so if I change the name on the birth certificate. She goes, well, she'll find out eventually. I go, yeah, but like years from now, because I'll be the one who goes and picks it up because she was from the. There was a real moment.
Lady starts sweating.
Oh no!
In my memory, it's like a solid 30 seconds where I stand there and look at her as I'm looking at this piece of paper, trying to decide whether or not to change my son's legal name.
Yeah.
Whoa! Because I thought like we could probably get all the way to preschool without telling her.
So the enrollment is when they get you.
And it's like, wait, what? But anyway, so Beowulf, my kid, is really into Spider-Man and specifically Miles Morales. And I love Miles Morales. We watched Into the Spider-Verse probably inappropriately young for him because there's like an on-screen death and like an on-screen murder.
Yeah, you know.
Not killing it at parenting. Wah, wah, wah.
No pun intended.
It can't be worse than Lion King. You're good.
Oh, we watched that really young too. Man, I am a terrible dad. But we're watching this. But I love Miles Morales for my son because like he's got a Spider-Man who looks like him. One of the things growing up that I didn't have is I didn't have an accessible superhero who looked like me or like. Mm-hmm. You know, and my son, one of the first things he said as we're watching Into the Spider-Verse when he's like, you know, like 3 or 4 years old is like, he's got hair like me, Dad. And like, oh my gosh, it broke me. I was like, oh, son. And so my son loves Spider-Man. If you ask him, who's Spider-Man? Miles Morales. Like, I'm a Peter Parker guy, right? And so it's like funny, we got 2 separate Spider-Man. So we get like the Spider-Verse happening in our home, right?
Yeah.
And so like we haven't seen like the new, because again, trying to be a better parent, we haven't seen the Marvel because like, yeah.
It's a lot.
I was going to say, there's...
Peter with great power. Oh my gosh, I lost it.
Dude.
Well, you can't, like, the power of the most recent Spider-Man, you can't get that unless you've seen all of them up to that point.
That's true.
Like, you have to run them through the gauntlet.
Yeah, no, yeah, we got to get... So
shoot, I never thought about it. Dude's behind. That's going to be rough.
Oh my gosh.
Every year you'd be behind.
Yeah, well,
That's rough.
You know, he still doesn't have a solid understanding of like. I mean, he gets like. For those of you who haven't seen Into the Spider-Verse, it's been out for a few years. This is on you. Spoiler. Yeah. Like when his uncle, oh my gosh, that whole reveal, and then like he understands that, but like the Uncle Ben, like, so anyway, so
this kid loves it.
So I was just looking. I was trying to find someone who could like. So maybe I do know someone. I was just looking for someone who could either do like a sweet like design that I could like get from like one of the design your own tattoo places, like semi-permanent, or like some art for my son, and so. So that's why I asked that.
I figured you never got I checked the comments. I didn't see one comment, somebody specific, but I figured there'd be a fun story on it. So.
It's too long fun story.
Okay.
That's the thing about me. You never get a short story, which is why people avoid me sometimes in public. What? It's okay. I see you, and I still love you.
You're great on podcasts.
That's true. I can
drive
talk
by,
nonstop.
keep on driving.
Oh my gosh.
Sport mode. Okay, last one.
Okay.
Coincidentally, leave me alone. You're the last person on Earth, or at least the continent. What do you do?
So much. One, like, I think you wallow in the existential angst of it all. Because, I mean, especially if you know for sure, right? It's that question of, like, if you're the last person, like, really. And not like the last man on Earth where it's like, I find all these people. But, like, you are for sure.
Legitimately
for whatever reason,
the last.
The last. You move into this, like... I mean, that's the apocalyptic story that, like, we're obsessed with at some levels, Americans, right?
Oh, yeah.
Like the I Am Legend, which I prefer the original ending to the alternate one. Because
I am the main character of the world.
Yeah.
I am the center of the world.
Yeah.
I mean, there's just so many questions, like philosophically and theologically, that you're like, right? And like, because human beings are meant to be in community. Because even like in monasteries, monks who are doing solitude are required to come down and be in community with the other monks on a regular basis because we're meant to be in community. So it's like, there's that. So I think I find a dog.
Yeah.
And if I learned anything from I Am Legend, you need
Gotta
a dog.
have a dog.
Gotta have a dog. That was another rough one. Like, my gosh.
No. You're like, no, come on. That was tough.
Spoilers.
Again.
If you haven't seen it,
The dog
shame on you.
dies.
And also, there's like 4 versions of this movie. That's like the 4th make of that movie.
That's true.
It's the better one of them, and it's not even like the original like novella is so much better. If you haven't read I Am Legend, it's so short that they tack on a bunch of his short stories at the end to make it a book with pride.
Your son, you're going to show him that like next year. He's like, he's got hair like me too.
It does.
I assume, I haven't seen the other ones, but I assume they probably weren't played by Will Smith.
They were not. So, you know.
He keeps reprising the role for the same movie over and over.
We'll eventually get it, guys.
He's just he loves this story.
By the way, so they are doing Bel Air. I don't know if you've seen did you guys see that YouTube fan trailer for Bel Air? So Will Smith was really interested to interview the guy. Like there's a YouTube sort of situation where he interviewed the guy because he and Jones, is it Quincy?
Yes.
Yes, Quincy Jones.
Yes.
Apparently are producing Bel Air as a dramatic series take on The Fresh Prince, which of course, if you remember The Fresh Prince in the latter few seasons, was pretty much a drama.
Right.
Mm-hmm. But from the jump, this is going to be a drama. And they just dropped the trailer, I want to say, a week or so ago.
Okay.
And it looks so good. I'm excited for this.
Okay.
So
I watched the reunion.
I didn't see the reunion.
I thought it was pretty cool.
Yeah.
Just saying.
Will Smith is now older than Uncle Phil was when Uncle Phil started that show.
Oh, my God.
And also, Uncle Phil was the Shredder on the animated Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles.
Huh. What? Really? I did not know that.
Yes. So,
Uncle Phil.
There's so many
R.I.P.
like levels there of just like what. But anyway, so I'm stoked about
That's
Bel
tight.
Air.
Tight.
And
So you're finding a place to chill and watch Bel Air with your dog. And
I mean, I don't know. Like, I mean, so much of my life is like people oriented. Like, I love people.
No, for sure.
And so I think honestly, like there's a little bit of a flip out period. And then there is human beings have to have purpose to live. Like, that's just a thing that is real, which is why people especially when we talk about people, especially who are elderly, who know they're dying, can make it to a birthday or can make it to until someone else comes and basically says, I love you, Dad, you can go or whatever. Like there's so many stories and based on some of the worlds are running, I get to hear a lot of these stories. Mm-hmm. And so you have to have purpose. And so finding purpose more than just survival. And probably a lot of reading and catching up on movies that I never, because I'm assuming there's power somewhere. I guess, yeah. Like
for a little bit at least, right? I mean,
Yeah.
But, I mean, you referenced the show Last Man on Earth, which when I first met Luke Urban, you guys at the gathering, he looked and sounded very similar to Will Forte. They had the same hair because it was before he started gelling his hair up, and he has the full look and everything.
Yeah.
And he's also kind of like he could probably survive on his own type of thing.
Oh, he definitely could.
But in the show, the separate of Luker, he does that for like the first 2 years. Like he does what everybody thinks you would do. It's like you live crazily and like you steal the Mona Lisa and you go cross country and all this. And then after about 2 years of the prodigal son lifestyle, he's like, all right, I have no purpose. I'm going to end it. And then runs into somebody.
Yeah. But like, I mean, because at this, like, even if you're the last person, there's 7 people on the planet, we'll say. 6. We'll let one of the scientists in the Antarctic like survive for a while. Yeah. There's 7 people on the planet and like 7 up in the space station for a couple of years, not much longer than that.
Yeah.
Also, I think I'd find out where every nuclear reactor in the country was and avoid those. That would be the other thing that would do.
Oh yeah, because there's nobody touching those. That's
those are gonna go critical. So
just go hit the off button. You're good.
yeah. That's never gone wrong, Chernobyl. 3 Mile Island. But yeah, I mean, you've got to find something to do that gives you a purpose, and yeah. So it's the role of the Robinson Crusoe. Right?
Yeah.
So, we even got classic literature in here. Look at us go.
Yeah.
We really classed this joint up today.
Looking good, man. I can't think of the last time we referenced a book on here.
I don't know what you're talking
referenced
about.
a couple today.
Well, with you.
Yes, excluding this episode.
Yeah.
Yeah, we might need to read some books.
That's what Audible's for.
Yeah.
So
4 hours.
That's why I listen to podcasts.
yeah, podcast, Audible. Right now, my Audible, I'm listening to a great
one.
book, The Spirit Level. It's about like, here's the thing that's going to upset somebody in the comments: income inequality. But it's like a global statistical look at what happens when the wealthiest and the poorest are further apart and when they're closer apart, and what are the outcomes. And I'm still got like, this is a significant book, about 4 hours left on it. And one of the interesting things is, in a lot of ways, it is better to be poor in a country where there is like less income inequality than it is to be wealthy in a country where there's broad income inequality, because you have better outcomes in all the ways, even if you're wealthy. So when you talk about mental wellness, physical health, and all these kinds of things, and even, I mean, it's weirdly because society, like there's,
Once you pass the first rank of Maslow's hierarchy of needs, food, water, shelter, it's like, all right, now that I got that taken care of, am I happy? It's like,
yeah, it's vapor, all is vapor, as the teacher put it in Kohelet. So, Ecclesiastes, sorry.
another book.
Yeah, it's a super old one, and it's like one of only 2 types of that type of wisdom literature that we have an extant copy of, and it's a super interesting thing. But we could talk that all day.
Hours.
We won't.
Yeah.
So
That's for podcast number 3 with
listen,
John, right?
Follow up.
I hope
bringing you
the
back.
follow up is just being able to say, you know what, thanks to TRIFLIX, because you guys are the ones who really pushed me over the edge and getting that funding for my dream, and if I get to come in and just like share that. So
We would love for that to be the case. So
I really appreciate you guys having me on, and let me tell my story. Let me talk about this thing that I really love. I love the stories that you're going to tell about people around Columbus, and so thanks for what you guys are doing here, and so many things that you are adding to like the cultural zeitgeist of the area, but then also the way that you've shown up at weddings and stuff that I've been a part of, and being able to hear people talk about like how much they appreciated the photos and the videos and these sorts of things. So thank you so much for having me on. Thanks for letting me, again, share this passion. Tristan, thanks so much for, being on the board, which is like asking you an extra thing on top of like everything that you're doing. And thanks to your wife. Tell her I said thank you. I'm so sorry. Cole, thanks for the genuine questions today and the interest. Man. So, and telling me not to ask those questions, like start answering those questions before we walk in the room. And David, thanks for so much, and like, really pushing for this all to happen, and like putting up with them to like edit this whole, or like produce this whole thing
for you, John.
So
he puts up with a lot.
He does. So make sure that you share the episode, and all the platforms.
Pretty please.
The way that this gets spread is that you share it. in your social medias, and then also make sure you click that like button and subscribe. Thanks so much for joining us here on the TriCast, and we'll see you next time.
Hey, check out links in the description for most places have link wherever the description is. Check that out, and
somewhere
we'll be atting all of your ats.
Many ats.
All the ats.
All
The
the
website.
ats.
Go check out the website. Go support John Bundick. Real quick, what do we got?
Check out TRIFLIX Cast on Instagram, and we are actually on every podcast platform, at least the major ones. If we're not on one, let us know. We'll put it on there. You can also watch the video on YouTube. If you have just general interest in TRIFLIX, go check us out. TRIFLIX.com, TRIFLIX LLC on Instagram. Because we make videos and we do video. Or
have a good day.
Photos too. So check us out. Wow, that's how we do this.
I think we should just cut it at the do and it just like cuts.